Good morning, afternoon, evening, or night, whenever and wherever you may be tuning in from. I'm Corey, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Justin. And we want to thank you for tuning in to episode number 9 of Rift with Friends. And joining us today is none other than Sherman, previous RQ winner in Vegas and runner-up in the Vancouver, BC regional that we just had this last weekend. And for those people who may not know who you are and kind of what your competitive background is in TCG, could you give us a little bit of history on yourself?
Yeah, so I have been playing Magic since I was a kid. Now I'm an old man, so that's a long time. And my first Magic Grand Prix that I competed in was in 2007. And the last one I did was in 2025. So many years of doing Magic. I have recently decided not to keep playing Magic. There were, some things I didn't really enjoy about the way the game was going, and hadn't really been having that much fun competing. So I decided to stop. And then I ended up with some free time on my hands, and I had a friend who wanted to get into Riftbound, and he was practicing for Houston, and he said, "Do you want to come help me practice?" And I said, "Sure, why not? I don't got anything better to do." So that's how I ended up learning Riftbound, and I didn't play Houston myself, but I had so much fun practicing with him that I decided, I need to compete in this game.
Yeah, it's interesting that we talked to a lot of people who have played Magic prior, and that echo chamber seems to be a constant. Where it's like, as a kid, we fell in love with this beautiful game that seemed to be well designed and well loved, and as it aged gracefully. But in recent years, for a myriad of reasons, whether it's the amount of IP coming in, the amount of sets that are now in a yearly rotation, like Magic just doesn't have the same magic that it used to have. And I find a lot of things that I grew up on in the Magic community now in the Riftbound community. And it's been really refreshing to be a part of the Riftbound community, and really takes me back to when I grew up with Magic. So it's cool to see players like yourself. I know in Vegas you were saying that it was kind of your first big tournament into Riftbound, and sure enough, you just kind of crushed it. So it was really cool to see.
Yeah, now at post Vancouver, like the results I've had in Riftbound have just been incredible. Like I I would never have guessed that I'd be so so successful based on how mediocre my Magic career was. But yeah, for whatever reason, Riftbound seems to be working for me.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities too. I talked to a lot of players who are like, "Oh, how do you describe Riftbound?" It's like, well, if you've got a good Magic base, like transitioning to Riftbound outside of the stack, and how like your, because in Magic you can essentially respond anytime someone sneezes, versus like Riftbound there's a cadence and kind of windows of openings that allow you to interact. And I think that's like one of the big differences between, say, Magic versus like Riftbound. Like, other than that, there's like a really good similarity base. But before we kind of hop into kind of like Vancouver, let's talk about some of your tournament prep, and then we'll kind of deep dive a little bit into Rengar. But let's figure out why'd you pick Rengar? Is there similarities in like play style from like Rengar to Draven? Because we know you were playing Draven obviously in Vegas, but we also know that kind of Draven's fallen off a little bit. So what kind of led you in that direction?
So there's a few kind of sub questions that are implied here, and I'm gonna address some of those. So the first one I want to discuss is, I'm not looking for a deck that's similar to Draven. That Draven deck was horrible. The Glorious Executioner card is one of the most unpleasant cards I've ever played with. and I do not wish that upon anyone. So I'm very glad they banned a bunch of cards from Draven, and I'm glad Draven is not very good. Although I did play against Draven once this weekend. Yeah. So why am I playing Rengar? There's kind of a boring answer, which is a friend of mine built a Rengar deck, and he really likes Rengar for character reasons. So he was like really excited to build and play this Rengar deck, and he was not attending Vancouver. He's not able to compete in these things, and I didn't really have a deck in mind. I was kind of looking for a metal hunting angle, and the Rengar deck that he built seemed cool, and he was very excited about it. So I took up the mantle on that. I wouldn't have played the deck if I didn't like it, but the way that the Rengar deck plays is also just really fun. It's you've got all these cards that you have so many different ways you can play them. You can ambush them. You can play them during your turn. You can do all kinds of tricky stuff. A lot of different ways to use your cards. You have the Pride Stalker +1 pumps that can get spread around in a million different ways. And it really adds a lot of optionality over how you play your cards, which is generally a good thing if you're able to choose the right options. The way that all my cards can be played on my opponent's turn is really nice in terms of like forcing my opponent to commit to something, and then I can use my cards in whatever way lines up the best against that. So I like that dynamic a lot. Also, there is, I guess, one similarity to the Draven deck that I did actually like about the Rengar deck, which is the Thrill of the Hunt card. Gives you the ability to score on your opponent's turn in the same way that Ride the Wind does. And I value that ability quite a lot in a Riftbound deck because getting to line up the scoring tempo in a certain way is very advantageous. So it's really nice to have a card that can kind of let you hammer out the scoring tempo to be favorable.
Yeah, we've seen tempo be a pretty huge factor in this recent development of how the meta is shaped up. And it seems like Rengar has a plethora of lines of play that maybe a lot of players were not expecting. And it's very cool that you were able to adapt what your friend had put together and kind of represent that portion of it. And not only just going for the metal card, but also being able to, take second place is absolutely incredible. So what does your testing process look like leading up to some of these regional events? And what differed from previous events to this one?
So there's a few different like competing priorities that you have to figure out which things you want to prioritize when you're preparing for one of these tournaments. So you need to answer the question, like, what is my goal? Do I want to get the top 64 so I can get an invite to the regional, which has an unknown value. No one really knows, how much you should care about that. But it's at a minimum going to be pretty cool. And then the other thing is like, whatever legend you pick, you're in a race to get the best of on that legend, which has a varying amount of value based on what legend it is and how in demand that best of is for the fans of that legend. So in my case, I already have 2 invites from Vegas and Atlanta. So I was like just totally focused on finding a metal deck that I think I could have fun playing. Like no matter which legend I pick, I'll be competing for a best of. So I just need to figure out something that is not going to be that popular and something that I'm going to have a good time playing with. Those are kind of my priorities that I focused on. So when I was preparing for Atlanta, which is the tournament I played before this, where I already had one invite, I was not aware of the second invite having any use at the time, although now we've heard that 2 invites is where you want to be. I was also looking for a metal hunting angle then, but like I kept playing all these different decks and I basically hated them all. And like eventually I found the Lucian deck that I ended up playing, and like that deck seemed kind of awesome, so I got to play it. But I tried like 5 or 6 different, like I played a Fiora, I played a Tempo Ezreal deck. I can't remember what else I played, but a bunch of decks. This time it was not like that at all. Like I was in the process of just like playing a few of the top decks to try to figure out what the meta was like. Like I got like this LeBlanc deck list from a friend of mine, and like I went to one Nexus night with it and I hated it, but like that was also the same Nexus night that my friend built the Rengar deck for. So I just switched over to that Rengar deck like right away, and then just focused on that. So how does the testing process go beyond that is I've got my team, Aspirants Climb. We have a Discord that we write up a bunch of stuff about decks in and ping each other to play practice games and stuff. So I played a bunch of practice games. I did play some with some other decks too, just to get some variety of experience. I made a few videos and posted them on our YouTube channel. But yeah, that's basically it. Just play a bunch of games with my friends, play a bunch of Nexus nights to, get some games in with the rest of the world. And we had a testing house actually this time, which I had never done before. But we all, well, not all, but many of us went up to Seattle for the week before the tournament, and just had an Airbnb and just played games for 10 hours a day or whatever. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a cool aspect, especially as you start becoming more of a higher level competitor. Especially like in my experience, I've got some buddies who do a similar thing for trying to get a ticket to the Pro Tour. They'll essentially just grind games for 8 to 10 hours, and then they'll try to travel a little bit ahead of time, do the Airbnb thing, and just really continue to grind. Do you yourself play majority IRL, or are you also like smashing online games? Are you kind of doing a mix of both? And then what's your kind of approach to figuring out sideboards as well?
I'm not playing any online games outside of my team Discord. I have not tried to do the like random matching on TCG Arena or the Runes and Rift Ladder or anything like that. I have thought about it a little, but the team Discord games are basically all online, and then I play 3 Nexus nights a week usually, just to get some make sure I'm not too inbred with the team decks and stuff. And then, sorry, what did you ask about sideboarding?
What's your guys' team approach to like figuring out sideboard, how to sideboard, what to bring in, and kind of what to prep for the tournament?
Yeah, so in general, well, okay, so there's a couple different things to consider with a Riftbound deck that makes it a little more complicated than a Magic deck, but in your game ones, you have a certain battlefield, and you want your cards to work well on that battlefield. And then in your post board games, you have different battlefields. So sometimes you have cards that line up very well with either your going one game one battlefield or one of your other battlefields, and you kind of swap that out when it's appropriate. The other thing is that when you're going second, you start with 3 runes. So that means you can de-emphasize having 2 drops and play a bit more 3 drops. Like Sneaky Deckhand is a good example of a card that really cares about this. So like if you're playing a purple deck, and especially an aggressive purple deck, you might have Sneaky Deckhand in your sideboard that you want to play when you're going second. But other than that, what you want to do with your sideboard is be able to present 39 cards that you like in each matchup. And the way to do that really is you make a spreadsheet. You've got your deck list with your 47 cards, and you kind of just go matchup by matchup, like which are the 8 cards that I'm taking out, and then like if the cards you have left are all acceptable, then you're in a good spot for that matchup. And if you're taking out a bunch of cards that you actually like in the matchup, maybe you actually have too many cards for the matchup, and you can trim some of those to make room for matchups where you don't have enough cards. But definitely like going holistically is the right way to think about it. You don't want to just be like, I need to play 3 auctions so that I can have a good matchup against Aurora or whatever. And then like when you get to the tournament, you start looking through your deck and you're like, oh, all my cards are already good against Aurora. Why do I have these auctions? I don't need them.
Is there a in your testing phase, like we obviously know you switched over, you played LeBlanc at Nexus Knights, and then you shifted over to Rengar. Is there an amount of games that you have to play in your own right so you feel comfortable with the deck and kind of confident with taking it into such a big tournament to play 2,000 people?
Yeah. Let's see. I wouldn't. So I think the more like, sorry, let me think about this for a second. So when I'm trying to figure out what deck to play, I generally want to be fairly picky. Like there are so many possible decks out there to try that I don't want to play 10 matches with a deck I don't like, and then I just wasted my, I could have played 2 matches with 5 different decks instead. So if a deck has bad vibes, I want to reject it pretty quickly. But if a deck has good vibes, then I want to play with it a bunch. And I want to refine it and make it better. So like I took this Rengar deck and I've probably changed 15 or 20 cards since I started on it. And that took a lot of games to figure out like which cards are not pulling their weight and what kinds of things am I having trouble with that I need to add some cards to address. So I probably played maybe like 20 Nexus Knight matches with Rengar, and probably another maybe like 10 in the Discord, and then another 15 or 20 in the testing house.
Yeah, a lot of heavy grinding. So when you are going into these competitive situations, and you're sitting at the table, we see a lot of people taking notes, but a lot of players don't necessarily know exactly if they are taking notes during the game, what they should be writing down. So what information are you noting for yourself, and what would you recommend that players take into consideration when they're taking their notes?
Yeah, I don't take a lot of notes. I have a tiny little notepad that fits in my deck box, and what I do with it is mostly I just keep score. So yeah, like writing down whenever the score changes, and generally I have a notation system that lets me determine which battlefield it was and why they scored a point very easily. So that's most of my notes. And then the other thing is, if you see their hand, you need to write it down so you can remember what it is. Unless they keep their hand revealed, which I think is generally kind of nice to do. I usually do that, but not everybody does, and you definitely don't have to. But yeah, like that's what I think is worth noting down. I have seen some people do things like write down the bottom cards of their deck when they do a stack deck or whatever. I would not recommend that. I think that's mostly a waste of time. And it made a little bit more sense when like called shot was legal and people were seeing their entire deck in a lot of games, because then it does come up. But even then, finishing games in time is very important. If you get a draw, that's really bad. That's basically a loss. So yeah, if you're taking notes that are costing you some minutes on the clock, it's probably not worth it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, kind of diving deeper into Rengar, is there a kind of a player skill cap that you would think, like, why should or shouldn't players be picking up Rengar? Is it a legend that you would recommend to new players, or is it something that more experienced players have an easier time with?
Definitely the latter. The way that I built this Rengar deck, you just have so many choices every single turn, millions and millions of different ways to use your cards, and the cards are not strong enough to bail you out if you're making the wrong choices, I think, mostly. So yeah, I wouldn't really recommend it to a new player, although I mean maybe it'll be fun. But I think it might be one of those decks where it's kind of tough to figure out why you lost sometimes. And like, I think that trying to get better as a new player, one of the most important things is to figure out what was going on in the games you lost that you need to change. So I'd probably look for a deck that's a little more straightforward.
And we see this kind of often when newer decks kind of pop up, or decks that like aren't the standard top three. But there's always this, I don't necessarily know how to figure out this deck. I don't know how to win over this deck. What are some of the bigger mistakes you see since you've piloted Rengar that not necessarily new players, but just players in general make against Rengar? Like, are there commonalities that people are often falling into?
Yeah, so there's a really funny one. In one of my testing videos, which I posted on the Aspirants Climb YouTube, there was a Rengar versus Diana matchup. My friend and teammate Dan, who was playing the Diana side, made this play where he went in with his 2-drop to a battlefield, and then he played his Vex Apathetic to that battlefield. And then on my turn, I punch firsted my guy that was in my base and went over and killed his Vex and his 2-drop. And he said, well, okay, I forgot punch first exists. Can we back up? I shouldn't have done this. And I said, yeah, of course. Because that's how testing games work. So we backed up, and he played his cards in his base instead. And then in the finals against Alan ZQ, the exact same thing happened. He went in with his 2-drop, he played his Vex to his battlefield, and I played punch first and wiped him. And he lost that game because of it. He said it was a total throw. He should have played his cards in his base. I mean, Alan ZQ is an amazing player. It's just he didn't see this coming. And so he got on by it. I actually played against Prismat earlier in the tournament as well. He was playing Annie, but he also had Vex Apathetic. And he made a very similar play where he played Vex Apathetic to a battlefield, and I went with my pit rookie over to the Emperor's Dais, that was the other battlefield, and bring my pit rookie back, play a Sand Soldier, replay the pit rookie, get a bajillion buffs, and go kill his Vex Apathetic. And he lost that game because of it too. And yeah, so like, and beyond those, even beyond those two guys, like from many people who found out I'm playing Rengar, they go, how do you beat this Vex Apathetic card? And it's just like every single time, this is exactly what happens. Like somebody just slams Vex Apathetic onto a battlefield, and I just have, a 1/1 in my base, and I just pump it up with a bunch of shit and go kill it. And it's like, this was never going to be a problem. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think a lot of players forget that you can just straight up fight Vex. Like they're so caught up in like the abilities of Vex, and they're like, man, I just can't. I'm like, well, it's cool. Just wait a turn and just go to town the next turn, and there's not a lot Vex really is going to do there. So I think that's very, very smart to remember. Oh, Corey, you're muted still.
Yeah, there we go. Got it taken care of. Can you kind of walk us through your deck list, through your sideboard and decisions into certain matchups that you make, and just kind of give us a general deck breakdown of what your decision making behind this this recipe Rengar deck that I've seen a lot of players playing recently on the online ladder?
Okay. Yeah, so the list I started with had Rengar pouncing and first mate, and maybe something else, and did not have as many sabotages or challenges, did not have the Kaisas or Dariuses. So that list was more focused on having more ambush stuff, doing more like fancy stuff with the first mate, and like that stuff was cool, but I kind of felt like the rate on the first mate and the pouncing Rengar were a little too bad, and I was losing games because I just didn't have the kind of card power to compete a little bit later in the game. Like both Rengar and first mate are not very flexible cards. Like once they're on the battlefield, they're defending for just 3 and they're not really doing anything. Yeah, so I put in the Kaisa and Darius to give me a little bit more staying power. And Kaisa also, actually both Kaisa and Darius also add the accelerate aspect, which the first mate was kind of doing, but not as well. So that's kind of how I ended up where I am with the units. Sabotage, I think, is just a great card. I really like seeing their hand. The amount of like the knowledge of their hand is often just worth so much in terms of material, because like a lot of times you have to sacrifice some amount of material in order to play around a card. Like for example, if I want to go like 5 into a 4, but I'm worried you might have discipline or something, then maybe I need to send in 5 plus 2, and then if you have nothing, you just kill my 2-drop. But if I've seen your hand, I don't have to sacrifice my 2. So yeah, that hand knowledge is really important. And also against Aurora, Sabotage is the best card you can have, because the games you're going to win are going to be games where they don't have the Aurora to play. And if you sabotage their Aurora, then that's one more Aurora that's on the bottom of their deck instead of in their hand. So I definitely wanted to include those. And then challenge, I wanted for LeBlanc, basically. Like, I thought LeBlanc is very popular, and if they have a Karthus in their base, then their deck is like really firing on all cylinders. And if they don't have a Karthus, then they're a lot less scary. So challenge is a great way to get rid of that. Yeah, and then for the sideboard, I really like Unyielding Spirit as a one of in orange decks. The card is not very flexible. It's very, very hard to use 2 copies, so I really don't want to play 2. And it doesn't do anything against a lot of decks, but there are some cards that it just gets such a favorable exchange against. You're going to win the game on the spot. Like if your opponent plays Singularity and you play Unyielding Spirit, it's over. And also it happens to line up well against Elder Dragon. So it's another kind of nice aspect of it. I mean, it's not like the best card imaginable against Elder Dragon, but sometimes you just need to buy a turn or two. Then the rest of this stuff, the Bryn here, mostly I want that for Aurelia. That's kind of a card where you just play Bryn here against Aurelia, and they kind of are obligated to play a bunch of spells from their hand, and then you kind of know where they stand for the turn, and you're not forced to go fight against the spells they just played. You can just chill. And if they don't play a bunch of stuff, then you go kill their creatures, and like their game kind of relies on their creatures not getting killed. So yeah, and then Auction, just super strong sideboard card. A lot of orange decks should play it, and it happens to be very good against Aurora. There are other decks that are gear based, such as Aurelia and Azir, that it does pretty well against too. But yeah, if you have it in the wrong matchup, it's not a particularly inspiring card, so doesn't want to start in the main deck.
Yeah, I fear that card quite a bit. I'm an Aurelia player myself, so anytime I peek at the hand or get to see that come out, I'm just like, man, I do not want to play my GA. I do not want to give you boots, and you're just gonna dance all over my battlefields now. But you're right. Like I think a lot of people are main decking Auction now, and I think it's a little fear mongering based on what they think the field's going to be like at the tournament. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a good amount of gear that's out there, but I don't think it is warranted.
I think some decks can main deck Auction with a straight face. Like if you can make use of the Weapon Master, then it's not as bad of a card. But I have no gear in my deck, so it really just doesn't do anything for me other than steal opposing gear.
Was there anything in your deck that kind of overperformed that you didn't expect to do as much work? And then was there anything that kind of was underwhelming that you hoped to do better with, but just did its job and did okay?
I am very happy with the list. I wouldn't change anything. But if I could choose one card to draw every game, it would be Irresistible Fate Folk for sure. A lot of the games where you start with that, your opponent just has already no good play on their first turn or their second turn. Yeah, that gives you like a huge advantage in the early turns. Like I play Fate Folk, you play some 3 for 3, and then I go in maybe to the Star Spring and play Grim Apothecary and send the Fate Folk back home and kill your 3 with my Grim Apothecary, and it's like, yeah.
I think Grim's one of those cards that's like a lot of people didn't initially gravitate towards. Like we're starting to see it appear a little bit more, but Corey also loves the Fate Folk. It has a lot of fun interactions and trickery you can do, especially in orange. So I do like both of those additions there.
Yeah, I play Set personally, so kind of following in the Colin Kaiser footprint, if you will, on that retrospect of it. But besides your matchup with Alan, would you say that there was another matchup that really pushed you to your limits, was a big struggle for you? Was it legend specific, or was it just the player quality or draws in general?
I mean, I definitely played a bunch of matches that were very close. That I felt like my opponent let me get away with something. Like every round that I was winning, I kept saying he can't keep getting away with it. But yeah, like my deck just generates these games where both players make a million decisions, and if you get one wrong, it's going to cost you a huge amount of material. And yeah, fortunately, this weekend those discrepancies mostly went in my favor. Though I did lose the match I lost in the Switch was the opposite of that. I played against a Kaisa deck, and he had a Bryn here on a battlefield with 2 mana, and I played a couple of creatures to my base, pumped my Nidalee up to 6, and send it in 6 against 5. He used his last 2 mana to play Longsword, the card I had no idea was going to be in his deck, and it just totally owned me. And like I was prepared for him to play Stupefy and trade. That was going to be okay with me, but the Longsword and keep a 7 might unit on the field, that was devastating. And I absolutely lost that game because of it. Yeah, it's like that was the kind of thing that kept happening to my opponents throughout the tournament. But that time it happened to me.
Yeah, and like we pulled up some stats here too. I mean, that's outside of the Allen finals. Like that was your only loss. You had like 1 draw in round 13, but I mean, you did great. I mean, 86% win rate throughout the whole tournament. And it's great showing. I think Diana and Kaisa were your only 2 negative markers on that. Everything else you kind of steamrolled through. There's not even really a loss in those categories. So it's crazy to see how well and powerful that deck was.
Well, every time you interview a tournament winner or somebody who's in the finals or whatever, you're going to see a score sheet like that where they just beat everything. But it's not the most instructive. Like I don't think all of those matchups are good.
What do you think is your toughest matchup?
I think the LeBlanc hook deck, the Challenger TCG version, is pretty tough. They are very good at stacking up a battlefield with a 12 or 14 or even more might sometimes, and my deck does not crack that very easily. And also, I don't think Aurora is a very good matchup. I played against the LeBlanc deck twice, and I played against the Sivir deck twice, and I did manage to win all 4 of those matches, fortunately. But yeah, it definitely took some help from my opponents.
Yeah, I think a lot of people give up, especially with Aurora. I mean, you get Aurora out, you get a Dragon. A lot of people just think the game's over and let's keep going. But like you're saying, like sometimes you just need to buy that 1 extra turn or be able to defend against that 1 extra turn to be able to then figure out a good game plan. Now, if they get 2 Auroras out, then that's a whole different ball game. But dealing with 1 Aurora is possible these days, and I think a lot of players think that it's just GG once it hits the board.
Yeah, and one of my Aurora matches, I played game 1 for like 40 minutes, and he had an Aurora out for like 4 or 5 turns, and at a certain point he was like, "Can we just go next?" And I said, "No, I think I can actually win this game still." And I had like dreams of lining up Thrill of the Hunt at exactly the right moment to sneak in a hold to win, but it didn't end up working out. But then I won my Arena's Greatest game in 2 minutes, and then we were able to finish the 3rd game just in time, and I happened to win that one too.
Speed running, Jesus! 40 minutes to a 2-minute game. That's kind of cracking. I like to see that.
My opponent said at the end of the match he felt like he should have conceded the Arenas game even earlier than that because he didn't feel like he had enough time to win the last game.
A minute in, you're like, so can we just wrap this up now? Are we good? Like, what are we doing here? Do you want to kind of walk us through maybe the finals a little bit for those who haven't necessarily had a whole time to recap? Maybe give us your thoughts, maybe where you felt you played well versus obviously there's the online debate now with the Targon's reaction. Is there any food for thought you'd like to give us on that?
I haven't watched the games back yet. I'm planning to do that tomorrow, but Yeah, I definitely felt like I played pretty well and just got deck diffed because I think Alan's deck is just a better deck in general. But uh, yeah, it turned out I actually did have the opportunity to win the whole thing, and I didn't see it with the Targon thing you were talking about, which is pretty brutal. But
it's such a crazy line of play, though. Like I've watched a couple of videos on that. I'm like, that is such a 5-head move, and like
yeah, it would have been just an absolute galaxy brain, like just total legend way to win.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That can I mean, hindsight's 2020. It's always, a lot easier to see it from the above perspective when you're not in the match with the lights, the pressure, and everything that comes with being on the main stage. And you guys have obviously been competing for 20 plus hours at that point, not including all the practice and grinding and everything that you guys did beforehand. Kind of referring to where the meta stands. How do you currently view the state of the meta with like an S and A tier champions versus the B and C tier champion list?
So I guess Aurelia, Master Yi are very strong. Sivir, I think, is very strong. Azir is pretty strong. Probably maybe have that one tier below. LeBlanc, I think, is significantly overplayed. I don't think it's as good as how popular it is. Beyond that, who can say? Like, you can play any legend you want, Like, it's actually kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I completely agree with you. It kind of seems like we're a little bit in this like S tier, and then everything else is relatively A tier. Even we saw some popularity with Garen gaining some traction with the new Aurora builds, but
I would not recommend playing Garen.
Not recommend. We definitely don't. But
unless you're going for a metal card, though, like that, you got a good shot at running the metal card
for sure. Do. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of champions like that. Like Garen is a good example, but there are many such champions where, like, I think the world doesn't really know how good these champions are because nobody serious has taken a crack at making a good deck with them. And like, if you're seriously trying to compete in one of these things and win a metal card, I think there's a lot of that type of champion to choose from where you can just build a deck that's good if you're a good deck builder. And no one has ever tried building a good deck, with, let's say, Ivern, for example. Like, who knows how good an Ivern deck could be if somebody, tried to actually work on one.
Yeah, I think we saw that really heavily with the Teemo, right? Like, a lot of people, like including us, like we have Teemo on a C tier ranking system, but on the last regionals, Teemo's cracking top 16 pretty easily, and I think it kind of surprised people to kind of see the hidden card mechanic be so prevalent, but it did work, and we're seeing it a lot online now.
That's got a lot of similarities to the Rengar deck that I played, where it's so easy to make a big mistake against it and get totally owned because you played around the wrong hidden card or whatever. So that it's kind of a good choice for a tournament like this, the big open field tournament. You can get a lot of people who don't know the exact right way to play.
Yeah, and do you think that in the recent developments, like of the last few regionals that we had, we've seen a very unlike earlier on in Spirit Forged, where we saw the very heavy Draven meta, we've seen what I would consider a very good spread of decks, considering in the top. We kind of have our like top 5 powerhouses, and then everything else kind of falls into place, but it seems to be in a lot healthier of a place. Do you think that there are going to be decks that are gaining a lot more popularity after the recent developments for the last regional qualifiers that we've had?
No. For Sydney and for Vancouver, both, there was not a single deck above 7% of the field, and I think you're going to see that trend continue. There's just nothing that's so much better than everything else, like there was in Vegas. That like the best of pressure to play something that's not as popular really does a great job of counterbalancing the fact that, you know, Aurelia is a little bit better at scoring you top 64 maybe or whatever than, you know, than Teemo. But there's going to be 200 people playing Aurelia and you know 40 people playing Teemo, so your metal card chances are 5 times as good. Like that's yeah, I mean it's the best of system is really just really juicing the game in terms of making the meta diverse and keeping the tournament experience really interesting and having every match be different.
Yeah, I am very thrilled with that, and I think it adds that third layer of dynamic to the tournament run. Like you said, it's like you don't in other TCGs, you're just picking up the top rated meta deck, right? And you're just slamming that, hoping you have good results. Versus here, you could be a semi casual player working on a homebrew and just be really in love with a legend or a champion and actually get somewhere with it. You're not necessarily going to be making, you know, Pro Tour level kind of events later, but you are still being able to strive for something that gives you significance, and it really divvies up the field. I don't think without that we would see such a diverse field of legends. I think we would see a lot higher percentage of some of these decks being the main deck, but it does break up the field quite a bit, and I do think that makes it kind of spicy going into a regional.
100%.
Is there any decks you think people are like overlooking that you've played against? And then follow up question to that: if you didn't play Rengar, or if Rengar disappeared kind of from the meta, what would you be personally playing other than Rengar?
So I don't really think that. Well, I'm sure there are some good decks that are being overlooked, honestly, but I don't know what they are. Hopefully, I'll find one. I can play it in Hartford. But yeah, I don't. I'm not really planning to play Rengar again. I feel like the surprise factor is going to be gone, and people are going to practice against it. Given that the finish I had in Vancouver, and I think that's gonna make it a lot harder to win with. Not impossible. Like I like if I don't find a deck I like for Hartford, maybe I'll just play Rengar again because you know I've got it already. Like I feel like Rengar is my backup deck right now, and I don't know what my my front runner deck is yet. But I gotta look at the play rates of the decks in Vancouver and Sydney and just see if I can find one that's pretty unpopular that I can build a deck I like with. I don't know who that's going to be, but
yeah, and I think a lot of
soon.
I think a lot of people have that feeling, and I think a lot of people kind of naturally have like a mid-range Master Yi kind of in their back pocket as like a fallback deck because it's cheap, it's easy to kind of get into. That seems to be one of the more surprisingly popular decks.
Yeah, Master Yi has the nice aspect that it's the euphemism we use is it's very peaceful. What we really mean by that is you're not making a ton of decisions. Mostly you're gonna plop somebody on a battlefield and just keep it there and use your Master Yi power. Yeah, you've got some pump spells to play, but it's a pretty one-dimensional game plan. You just kind of do your thing. And that makes it a pretty good deck for a new player to start out with, which is pretty nice.
Yeah. You did mention Hartford, or can we expect to see you kind of the rest of the year at most of these regionals outside of maybe some of the bigger internationals if you're not traveling?
I will be at Hartford. I will be at LA. I won't be at Utrecht because that's too soon to make any changes. I will consider signing up for Barcelona, I think it is. The summer one in Europe.
That one would be really nice to go to.
I didn't really plan to travel this far for card game tournaments when I started this, but it seems like kind of the winds are blowing in the direction that I need to put in a little more effort on this.
Yeah, they start to fund themselves but a little bit, right?
Yeah, the
we'll see.
boat sails have caught the wind. We're going to run through some fun rapid fire questions just for you. If you want to just quick answers, and then we'll kind of get into the shout outs, any kind of final statements you want to make, anybody you want to thank or give special thanks or to that helped you prepare for the tournament, or just friends, family. So what is one of your biggest tournament pet peeves?
Okay. There are a lot of good ones to choose from, but the one that came up recently that I was peeved about is that there's currently a judge policy that if you ask a rules question, but you do it in the wrong manner, they won't answer it. And they'll make you rephrase the question.
Because they can't offer information to help influence the game. Yeah, I've heard about this.
It is one of the most insane policies I've ever heard of. It's totally pointless. Every single time anyone asks a judge question, the judge says, I can't answer that question unless you rephrase it. The person is going to rephrase the question and the question is going to get answered. So just answer the question. They asked a question, you can just answer it instead of making them do this song and dance.
Yeah, or answer it in a way that doesn't give the information to the game, right? Like if you know what my intentions are with the question, you can phrase the answer in a way not to necessarily shape it, which reminds me of a point. Which, can I ask you what you asked the judge in that game when you stepped away?
Oh, so that one they did answer, even though it was hypothetical for some reason. But so there were two judge calls in that finals that are kind of related to this. So the one you asked about was not super interesting, but Alan presented the abandoned hall, and my opening hand had Thrill of the Hunt. So I was thinking about mulligan Thrill of the Hunt, and I wondered if I Thrill of the Hunt to the abandoned hall, can I use the abandoned hall trigger to buff the thing that I played off Thrill of the Hunt? And it turns out the answer to that is yes, which is what I expected, but it's a little fuzzy, but it seems like it works. And they answered that question no problem. And I guess the reason they answered it is because there wasn't a current game situation where it was going to come up. So the only way I could have been asking is in a hypothetical. Well, I don't even really know what their requirements are, to be honest. But the other one I asked was Alan had Vex in the back, and I had Fey Folk, and I already knew the answer to this, and so did Alan, but I just wanted to check to make sure. And so I said, if I go in with this Fey Folk, target the Vex, and he gusts it in response, does the Vex still move to the battlefield? The answer is yes, because the Fey Folk doesn't say move that unit here. It says move the unit to that battlefield. So it's not referring to where the Fey Folk is. It's referring to where the Fey Folk moved to trigger the ability, which is a bit of a silly distinction, but it is what it is. So I asked the judge, and the judge was kind of like hemming and hawing, and Alan just answered the question. He said, yeah, it does move. I'm 100% sure. And I said, yeah, okay. I also am sure. So let's just move on. And then after the finals, that judge came up to me and he said, I'm sorry I couldn't answer your question. I had to, it's because it was a hypothetical and you needed to rephrase it as a rules question or whatever. And I started kind of yelling at him a little bit, like, this, the rant I just gave you guys, this is not a good policy. You need to just disregard it and answer the question.
Yeah, 100%. Because then you don't want to sit there and play a game of 20 questions, and it's like it just makes it awkward. Again, if they know the intent, they should be able to answer it in a way that does not influence the game, but still gives you clarification within the rules.
I mean, the players have the right to know the rules. Like, I'm not asking the judge to like, tell me if this is a good play. I'm proposing a line of play and asking, does this work? And like they do just have to answer that question, but first they're going to make me do a song and dance and say it a different way. But they're going to answer the same question regardless. Like,
dance,
I could have asked
the
judge, if so, instead of saying like, when I move my Fey Folk and it gets gusted, what happens? They don't answer that question. But if I say, if there were hypothetically a Fey Folk trigger and it got blown away from the battlefield, would the target still move? They would answer that question. So it's like, it's insane. It's crazy.
It's got to be frustrating, especially after you've grinded for 10 to 12 hours, 2 days in a row, essentially.
Well, it doesn't really hurt me because I understand this policy well enough to know that if the judge won't answer my question, I should just ask it again until they answer it, using slightly different words, and they will answer it. Also, I know the rules pretty well, so like I don't generally need judges to help me with that. I was checking just because I was in the finals and want to be 1,000% sure. But this policy is going to severely disadvantage people who either don't know the rules or don't speak English very well.
Yeah.
So like, if you don't know the rules, and especially if you don't know this weird ass policy, and a judge says I can't answer that question, and you just go, well, okay, I guess I'll just try it and see what happens. Like, you might just make a play that doesn't work, and then your opponent says that doesn't work. You're fucked. And that really sucks. That's like a really bad player experience. They're gonna feel like the judge fucked them, and like, they're just gonna go home, be mad, hate the game. Maybe they'll quit. Like, why do we do this? And then for a player who doesn't speak English, like maybe they just don't have the words to rephrase the question in a hypothetical, and so they don't get their rules question answered.
Or might just shut down and not even ask the secondary question to begin with. So yeah, you're very true. It could change the perception of newer players or players that are not super in the weeds with the game. Do you have any tournament superstitions? And then do you have any mannerisms? Like, I know some people shuffle cards, some people play with their hair, some people just have little ticks that they do when they're kind of getting stressed out or kind of getting into this higher level competition.
Superstition, not really. I do know that if you watch the footage of me in a feature match, you can see me kind of rocking back and forth. Sometimes when I'm thinking or waiting for my opponent to do something, and I've heard people make fun of that a little bit, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Is there any kind of snacks, drinks, anything that you like to take with you? Eat or drink. A lot of the time we hear that sometimes these venues, their food situations maybe aren't as like available, extravagant or available as other locations. So is there any kind of tournament fuel that gets you going that you can just rely on every time?
I don't have a specific snack that I bring always, but the general way that I try to do it is eat a big breakfast like an hour or two before the tournament starts, and then throughout the day, if you have some kind of snack. This time I happened to have granola bars. We bought some from Costco to stock our testing house, and we had a bunch left over, so I took some with me. But sometimes it could be trail mix or beef jerky, or people with different diets than me have brought egg whites, like drink or whatever. Just anything that's like you can top up a little bit, but it's not a serious like actual meal, like 100 calories or whatever. I think works pretty well, because the alternative is like you get hungry, it's 4 p.m., you've played 4 rounds, you got 4 more left, and you go over to the convention food booth and you buy, I don't know, chicken tenders and fries, and it's 800 calories, and you eat it, and then you get in a food coma, and you're not going to be at your best thinking wise for the next round or two.
Yeah, got that slow brain on the mind.
Yeah, so I try to avoid eating an actual meal during a tournament.
Yeah, I think a lot of people take that kind of mindset into it. Most of the players we've talked to are just really just pounding quick grab and goes. And then obviously, if you've been around long enough on the tournament scene, it's usually smashing as much as food as you can, like afterwards, going out to dinner with, the mates and having a good night.
Yeah, dinner is definitely the most serious meal.
Very much so. Well, we want to give you a kind of a spotlight, kind of a little window here to go ahead and shout out whoever you'd like. Go ahead and mention all your socials, your team, maybe mom and dad. Just floor is yours. We'll go ahead and let you rip for a minute.
Okay. So I want to thank all my teammates on Aspirant's Climb. They have been very helpful, helping me practice. Just being people I like hanging out with and playing the game with. I like to thank NRG Series for sponsoring us. You can buy Riftbound cards from their website, Nerd Rage Gaming, and they've got a tournament coming up in the I think it's called the Showdown Series, where it's kind of like mini RQs. They've got one in Milwaukee, maybe in July. I'm not totally sure when, but I'm sure you can find that out. And let's see, you can find me on Twitter and Metafy and YouTube at Samdsherman on all of those. And then you can find my team, Aspirant's Climb. We have Aspirant's Climb RB is the handle on all three of those platforms as well. So check out our stuff. We've got we posted 2 guides, I think, after Atlanta that are both free. There was a Jinx guide and a Lucian guide, both for set 2. So they're a little stale, but you can check them out. I've got a Draven guide from Vegas. It's also extremely stale. That's posted on my Metafy, and we are working on some guides from Vancouver. I'll be writing one for Rengar and posting it on my Metafy. And I'm not sure what the team's cooking up exactly, but we've got some things to reflect on that we'll probably write about. So yeah, check that out.
Well, I appreciate you as always. That's going to wrap up episode 9 here with Rift with Friends. Our guest here today was Samdsherman, the Vancouver Regional runner-up, Las Vegas champion, and best of Rengar. Huge thanks to Sam for joining us and sharing his insight into the tournament, the current meta, and his competitive journey. It's nice to be able to see players transition from other card games you grew up with, like Magic, and then really make a splash here in the Riftbound scene. If you enjoyed the episode, go ahead and make sure you subscribe, like, follow. Go ahead and check out Sam's socials, his team, and the Metafy. And as always, I'm Justin. That's Corey. That's Sam. And we'll see you on the Rift.